I don't relate much to the premise of Skip and Loafer. Moving from a small town to a big city is an experience I've never had, and doing that in order to pursue far-off career-related goals is a desire I've never felt. However, this show still manages to speak to me personally in ways that I could not have expected based on the premise alone, and it seems to have come at just the right time for me. A year of university has ended, and as I self-reflect on a very eventful few months, I have this cute new slice-of-life anime reflecting parts of myself back at me. I'm not usually a very talkative person. Even when I'm with a group of friends, I tend to take on more of an observer role. For a long time, I've thought that this was mostly just because I take too long to come up with something to say. I find myself thinking about what people will find funny or interesting to hear, what string of words and tones best convey the idea I've come up with, and then by the time I've hyped myself up enough to speak, I usually find that the moment has already passed and it would no longer make sense to say the sentence which I had so carefully constructed in my mind. The second reason I've thought up of why I'm more of an observer is that I do kind of just enjoy viewing social situations from the outside. I find it interesting observing how each sentence changes the course of a conversation, thinking about why people say the things they say, what effect their words will have on everyone else, how small misunderstandings almost spiral into full-on arguments before I step in and clarify the small semantic difference that started the whole thing, and then the bell rings and I realize I've gone an entire lunch period and only said one sentence. The author of Skip and Loafer seems to be a similar kind of overthinker. Much of the main cast have their own specific ways of overthinking certain situations, thoughts which take them out of the present, forcing them to enjoy each moment less, and it all reminds me either of myself or of other people I know. Mika and Mako's inner monologues are filled with thoughts about how others perceive them. Mako constantly thinks of herself as different from others, which leads her to think that they are looking down on her, and so she avoids contact. Whereas Mika is shown to have developed an extremely high awareness of what actions, outfits, and words create certain reactions in the people around her, as well as how what other people do affects their standing in any given social situation and what that means for herself. Yuzu also seems very aware of the dynamics of the people around her and is able to figure out what people's motivations are, like when she points out to Mitsumi that Mika is trying to use her to get closer to the hot blonde boy. We haven't really heard Shima's thoughts much, but it's pretty clear to me that he's some sort of people pleaser and very in tune with the thoughts and feelings of those around him. He's very quick to notice when Mitsumi is acting different. He says everything with this same smile, and his background as an actor has me assuming his arc will involve confronting the fact that he puts up a front of positivity. Mitsumi, while she's usually more straightforward than the others, also has lots of little moments where she thinks about what is socially proper, what a certain event represents, who in the room is going to be her friend in a few months. I know if I had to introduce myself in front of the class, I'd be losing sleep over that shit too. She even has this little checklist of what makes a good karaoke performance, and she's so right. When sharing something like this with a group, I've found that it's usually best to stick with something that's going to be fun. I watch a lot of movies with my friends, and I think I've noticed that in a group setting, more emotionally driven or deep stuff tends to be enjoyed less than the comedies, action, or adventure material, unless it's just a straight up masterpiece. Sometimes a friend recommends a more heady movie, and I go into it kind of dreading when people start talking over it and missing important plot details, whereas when we watch a Ghibli movie or some weird ass comedy, I feel more comfortable that people will come away from it more positively. Of course, this depends on which friends I'm watching them with. I have some friends who I can watch pretentious art movies with, and some who I know can't even watch Ratatouille without losing focus of the plot. The point is, just like Mitsumi's karaoke song choosing criteria, I have my own criteria for movies I would watch and songs I would play in the car with my friends, and the other character details that I listed off are all fairly analogous to parts of my own thought processes as well. It's been a while since I watched an anime that was this close to my own thought process, and honestly, I'm not sure if I can remember anything that had this many characters directly shown to think in ways so similar to myself, even if most of them aren't really similar to my personality at all. There's an obvious message when it comes to this kind of subject, and Skip and Loafer doesn't waste any time getting it across. This overanalyzing of social situations can remove you from their purpose, that they're just fun. The characters went to karaoke together just to hang out and have a good time in the moment, and Mitsumi almost gets caught up in this unnecessary web of thinking about what the motives and thoughts of certain people are, but she releases herself from this and decides to just do whatever's gonna make her and the group happy. Though, I think it's still interesting that the action that caps off this decision is her singing a song that fits into this criteria of what is a proper song to sing at karaoke. As I've already explained, this is something I've thought way too much about. The movies I recommend for watch parties and the songs I play on the aux all have to pass a similar kind of checklist based on what my mind tells me is a good type of thing to experience as a group. But I guess when we do things like this, we're not purely trying to deceptively manipulate the the situation to get what we want. The purpose of group karaoke is to have fun as a group. The purpose of watching movies together is to have fun watching the same movie. By thinking about the effects that different songs or movies have on people when experienced in a group setting, we are being conscious of other people's enjoyment and trying to maximize it for everyone. Additionally, I'm assuming that this is a song that Mitsumi does enjoy singing. She seems like she's having fun. Because of that, she's not sacrificing her own enjoyment of the situation in order to make others happy. She's just finding where what she enjoys and what she thinks the others will enjoy overlap. I like how the story gets this across while still pushing the message that at the baseline, we shouldn't forget that the purpose of these interactions is to simply have a good time and make the most of the moment. This episode with the student council lady applies some similar ideas to a non-social context. Up to this point, Mitsumi had already been characterized as a book-smart, ideal student with more of a priority on her school and career than enjoying a good social life. While Mitsumi initiates the plot of this episode thinking about how similar she is to Treasurer Girl, we find out throughout the episode how self-oppressive she actually is. This girl is so obsessed with doing what she thinks will make the most of every moment that she ends up not just stressing herself out, but she also misses out on lots of little things that would make her life more enjoyable. It serves to show us what could happen to Mitsumi if she became an overthinker in this aspect of her life. I imagine that this is more relatable to people who relate more to the main character for her career pursuits. I have a few friends with similar book-smart focuses who love their task lists and Google Calendar, but I've always thought that living in accordance to such a productivity maximizing schedule would be nightmarish. I can't say I've never had similar thoughts though. Sometimes when feeling the desire to play video games for hours or when receiving an invite to hang out with people, those thoughts creep in saying that those activities are a waste of time. Valuable limited time which I could be using to do my schoolwork or work on my own creative projects. These thoughts get you into the same struggle that Mitsumi gets into, thinking about what it means for something to be a waste of time. And I guess what I've come to conclude is that hanging out with friends is not a waste of time. Playing video games isn't a waste of time either. Of course, there are some things we should prioritize more or less, but life is not about maximizing productivity. And honestly, I don't think it's just about achieving goals, even if they are personally meaningful. What makes the most sense to me is finding a balance between achieving those goals and enjoying the moment. And sometimes spending time on one of those means taking away time from the other. But overanalyzing this stuff and trying to come up with some objectively perfect, rigid, time maximizing schedule is probably only going to take away from your actual enjoyment of life. In the same way that overanalyzing social situations to find the best thing to say will probably take away the purpose of socializing. I think that's the message Skip and Loafer wants us to come away with, that if we relate to these ways of thinking, it would probably help to just relax, say what we really want to say, do what we really want to do, and worry less about the things that don't really matter that much, so that we can all enjoy life a little bit more. Earlier in the video, I talked about two reasons why I tend to be more of an observer. Either I take too long to come up with something to say, or I just like listening to other people have a conversation. What watching Skip and Loafer has made me realize is that these two of my personal traits are actually very intertwined. The fact that I think about social dynamics so much is a big part of what leads me to overanalyze what the perfect thing to say would be. And not just that, but also that a lot of people share these same traits in different forms and quantities. I think I've definitely gotten better with conversations and stuff over the past year. I'm definitely better now than I was in high school. Part of that is for sure due to finding a group of people that I click with, but talking with people outside that group has gotten easier as well. I feel more comfortable in social situations now because I'm worrying less about what I say, and I'm also worrying less about being silent. If I don't have something to say, I'm not gonna try forcing anything out. If I do have something to say, I do my best to speak up. Improving social skills is just like everything else. It's not gonna get better if you never try. While I'm certainly not at the end of this self-improvement thing, I can tell that I feel less awkward and nervous, less desperate to fill my own silence. I can enjoy the moment more easily. One last thing I want to talk about. I think it's important when analyzing a story to think about the main characters and why the story is focused on them. In Skip and Loafer, we have Mitsumi and Shima. Mitsumi is very career-oriented, thinks a lot about what certain events should represent to her, like the importance of making it to the entrance ceremony, but she's also very straightforward and tries to do things just because she wants to, especially when compared to the other characters with a much higher tendency to overanalyze things. Shima, meanwhile, is very laid back and easily kind to everyone around him, but he lacks a passion direction in life. He has no real drive to achieve pretty much anything, and he seems to be a bit of a people pleaser, only acting by Kiro Benito type stuff. Mika has this interesting quote that part of falling in love with someone is finding something in them that you lack. So what do these two lack that they find in the other? Well, Mitsumi, being extremely straightforward and coming from a small town, doesn't really know how to operate in the complex new social dynamics she finds herself in. Almost succumbing to despair, Shima is the one who shows up to help her through this. His laid-back attitude and universal, kind social maneuvering are things that Mitsumi lacks, which he is able to help her with. Shima, meanwhile, is inspired by Mitsumi's straightforwardness and passionate dreams for the future. She's someone that makes him act more genuine, more upfront and present, not just someone sticking to the side of the conversation, saying whatever will keep it going smoothly, taking the path of least resistance. Both of these sets of character traits seem to be what the story sees as necessary towards living a fulfilling, enjoyable life. But at the beginning of the story, the two leads only have half of what they need. All of this is represented in the first episode, with Mitsumi getting lost in the train station, Shima helping her navigate to school, and then Shima being inspired by her to actually make it to the ceremony. Shima helps Mitsumi relax and operate in a new environment, while Mitsumi inspires Shima to actually put in effort towards something. These characters are the main characters because together they sit at the center of the story's themes, and by learning from each other, they are both on the path towards truly making the most of every moment. Boom, video over. Bye.